Have you ever wondered how little money a person really needs to live? Not to feel rich, not to feel comfortable, but simply to live, to wake up, to eat, to go through a normal day without breaking. For a long time, I never asked that question because I didn't have to. I had enough. Not a lot, but enough to not think too much. If I felt tired, I bought coffee. If I felt bored, I ordered food. If I felt stressed, I bought something small just to feel better. Nothing extreme, nothing dramatic, just small things, normal things, things many people do every day. But one evening, something changed. It was a quiet night, no noise, no plans, just me and my phone. I was scrolling without thinking, looking at photos, people traveling, people buying new things, people celebrating. Everything looked full, busy, expensive, and suddenly I had a strange feeling. Not jealousy, not sadness, just a quiet question. How much of this is actually necessary? I didn't answer it. I just sat there, still. And then another thought came, soft, but clear. What if I tried to live with almost nothing? At first, it sounded unrealistic, even a little foolish. But the idea did not go away. It stayed. The next morning, I wrote something down. Very simple. $5 a day for everything. Food, drinks, small needs. No extra spending, no exceptions. 30 days, just to see what would happen. I looked at that number for a long time. $5. It felt small, too small, almost impossible. And that was exactly why I wanted to try, not to prove anything, not to show anyone, and but to understand something I had never really questioned. My relationship with money, my habits, my comfort, my limits. So I began. Day one felt like a game, almost interesting. I woke up and did something different. I didn't buy coffee. I made it at home, slowly, carefully. It tasted simpler, but also strangely satisfying. Then breakfast. No ordering, no quick choices. Just what I already had. Eggs, bread, a little fruit. Basic, very basic, and still enough. That was the first surprise. Enough felt different, quieter, less exciting, but also more real. During the day, I noticed something else. Every small decision became important. Before buying anything, I paused, not for long, but long enough to ask, do I really need this? And that question was not easy because many things feel like needs, but are actually habits. In the afternoon, I felt a familiar urge, something small, a snack, something sweet. Normally, I wouldn't think twice. I would just buy it. But this time, I stopped. I looked at the price. I looked at my limit, and I realized this small choice mattered more than before. So I didn't buy it. Not because I couldn't, but because I chose not to. And that feeling was new. Not deprivation, not suffering, just awareness. That night, I checked my spending, carefully, slowly, and I was still within the $5, barely. But still, I should have felt proud. But what I felt instead was something else, a quiet tension, a question growing in the background. If one day feels like this, what will 30 days feel like? Day two was harder, not physically, but mentally, because the excitement was gone. Now it was real. More decisions, more limits, more awareness, and slowly, I began to see something. Money was not just about numbers, it was about habits, automatic actions, things I did without noticing, buying without thinking, spending without feeling, consuming without asking why. And now, Everything was slower, more visible, more honest. By the end of the second day, I felt tired, not from work, but from thinking, from choosing, from being aware, all the time. And that was the second surprise. Living with less money did not just change what I bought, it changed how I thought, how I noticed things, how I experienced every small moment. And deep inside, a quiet realization began. This experiment was not going to be easy. Not at all. But it was already starting to change something. Something small, something invisible, something I could not yet explain. And this was only the beginning. By the third day, something inside me began to resist, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet voice saying, "This is too much." Not too much in action, but too much in awareness. Too many small decisions, too many moments of stopping, too many times asking the same question: do I really need this? At first, that question felt powerful. Now, it felt tiring because the answer was not always clear. Sometimes, I did need something, or at least, it felt that way, like a warm drink on a long afternoon, or a small comfort after a stressful moment. And this time, I couldn't just say yes. I had to choose, carefully, slowly. And sometimes, I chose no, even when I didn't want to. That created a strange feeling, not hunger, not pain, but a quiet frustration, like something small was missing. By day 4, that feeling became stronger. I started noticing how often I used money to change how I felt, not to survive, not to live, but to adjust emotions. Bored, buy something, tired, drink something, stressed, order something. It was automatic, almost invisible. And now, without that option, everything felt a little heavier, a little slower, a little more real. On the 5th day, I made a mistake, a small one. But it mattered. I bought something without thinking, just a quick decision, a simple habit. And only after I realized I had already used most of my $5. That moment was uncomfortable. Not because of the money, but because of the awareness. I saw it clearly, how easy it was to go back, to forget, to act without thinking, and that scared me a little, because it meant this was not just about money, it was about control, or maybe the lack of it. That evening, I sat quietly, no music, no phone, just thinking. And I asked myself a different question. Not, what do I need to buy? But, why do I want to buy? That question was deeper and harder because the answers were not simple. Sometimes it was habit. Sometimes it was comfort. Sometimes it was escape. Escape from boredom. Escape from stress. Escape from silence. And that was the third surprise. Silence was uncomfortable. Without constant spending, without constant stimulation, there was space. Too much space. Time to think, time to feel, time to notice. And not all thoughts were pleasant. By the end of the first week, something had changed again, not outside, but inside. The resistance was still there. The discomfort was still there. But something else had appeared. Clarity, small, but real. I began to see patterns. Which moments were hardest? Which habits were strongest? Which emotions led to spending? Late afternoon was dangerous. When energy was low. When focus was gone. That was when I wanted to buy something. Not because I needed it, but because I felt empty. And food or coffee or something sweet felt like a solution. But now, I couldn't use that solution. So I had to find another way, Sometimes I just sat, doing nothing, letting the feeling pass, slowly, uncomfortably. But it passed, and each time it did, I felt something new, not pleasure, not happiness, but strength. A quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't show, the kind that builds without noise. By day 7, I looked at myself a little differently. Not better, not worse, just more aware, more honest. I was not just someone trying to save money. I was someone learning about myself, about habits, about emotions, about choices, and I started to understand this experiment was not really about $5 a day. It was about something deeper, something I had ignored for a long time: the connection between money and feeling. And that connection was stronger than I ever imagined. By the second week, something unexpected happened. The struggle did not disappear, but it changed. It became quieter, less emotional, more practical. The strong resistance from the first days slowly faded, not completely, but enough to create space. And in that space, new habits began to form. Very small ones, almost invisible. I started planning my meals, not in a complicated way, just simple thoughts. What do I already have? What can I use tomorrow? What will keep me full without wasting money? Before this, I never asked those questions. I just chose what felt good in the moment. Now, I was choosing what made sense. And strangely, that felt calm, not exciting, not fun, but calm. I began to notice how little I actually needed to feel okay. Not perfect, not happy all the time, but okay. A simple meal, a glass of water, a quiet space. It wasn't impressive, but it was enough. And that word again, enough. It kept coming back, and each time, it felt a little clearer. Around day 10, I faced a different kind of challenge, not internal, but external. I was invited to meet a friend. Nothing special, just a normal meeting, coffee, talking, spending time together. Before this experiment, I would say yes, without thinking. But now it was not so simple, because going out meant spending, and spending meant breaking the limit. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I had to choose money or connection, comfort or discipline. In the end, I still went, but differently. I didn't order anything, just sat there, talking, listening. At first, it felt awkward, like I was doing something wrong, like I didn't belong in that moment. My friend had a drink, a snack, a normal experience, and I had nothing, just water and myself. But something surprising happened. After a while, the discomfort faded, the conversation became the focus. The laughter felt real, and for a moment, I forgot about money. That was the fourth surprise. Many experiences do not actually require spending. We just believe they do. We attach money to connection, to enjoyment, to meaning. But sometimes, those things can exist without it. That realization was quiet, but powerful. By the middle of the second week, my daily routine felt different, simpler, slower, less noise. I stopped checking prices all the time, not because they didn't matter, but because I already knew what I could afford. The limit was clear, and that clarity reduced stress. Before, too many choices made everything complicated. Now, fewer choices made everything simple. Around day 14, I noticed something else. My mind was quieter, less distracted, less pulled by small desires. Not completely, but noticeably. I wasn't thinking about buying things all the time. I wasn't checking what I could get next. Instead, I was more present in small moments, eating slowly, walking without rushing, sitting without needing something to fill the silence. That was new and a little uncomfortable, but also peaceful. And then a deeper realization came, something I didn't expect. Freedom did not feel like having more. It felt like needing less. That idea stayed with me, followed me, changed how I saw things, because for a long time, I believed freedom meant more money, more options, more comfort. But now, with only $5 a day, I felt something different, not limited, but focused, not deprived, but aware. And in that awareness, there was a quiet kind of freedom, not loud, not exciting, but real. Still, this journey was not finished. There were more days ahead, more challenges, more moments I had not yet faced. And deep inside, I knew the hardest part might still be coming. By the third week, the experience changed again, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a deeper way. The early struggle, the mental resistance, the constant awareness, they were still there, but now they felt familiar, almost normal. What once felt difficult was becoming routine, and that was both comforting and a little dangerous. Because when something becomes normal, we stop questioning it, we stop noticing it, and that is when small mistakes can quietly return. Around day 16, I caught myself, a simple moment, standing in a small store, looking at something cheap, very cheap, just a few dollars. And the thought came, it's fine, it's small, it doesn't matter. That thought felt familiar, too familiar. I had heard it before, many times, before this experiment, and without thinking, I almost believed it again. But this time, I paused. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my wallet. I just stood there and watched the thought. It's small. It doesn't matter. And slowly, I realized something important. It was never about the price. It was about the pattern, because many small decisions create something big over time. So I didn't buy it, not because I couldn't, but because I understood what it really meant. That moment was quiet, but powerful. It felt like taking back control, not from money, but from habit. By day 18, a different kind of challenge appeared, fatigue, not physical, but emotional. Living with limits, for many days, began to feel heavy, not painful, just tiring, always thinking, always choosing, always being aware. There was no break, no moment of just do it. Everything required attention, and attention takes energy. That evening, I felt something I hadn't felt before, a strong desire to stop, to end the experiment, to go back to normal life, to buy something without thinking, to feel free again. That desire was real, strong, convincing, and for a moment, I almost gave in. But instead, I asked myself one simple question: what will I learn if I stop now? The answer was clear: very little, because the hardest moments are often the most important. So I continued, not with excitement, not with motivation, but with quiet commitment. One more day, just one more, and then another. By day 20, something unexpected returned. Not struggle, not resistance, but gratitude. Small, but real. I noticed things I had ignored before. A simple meal felt enough. A quiet evening felt peaceful. Even saving a small amount of money felt meaningful. Before, those things felt normal, invisible. Now, They felt different, clearer, more valuable. And I began to understand. When everything is limited, everything becomes visible. And when things become visible, they become meaningful. That was the fifth surprise. Not everything needs to be big to matter. By the end of the third week, I looked at my life in a new way. Not just money, but everything: time, energy, attention. I saw how easily they were wasted on small habits, on automatic choices, on things that felt harmless but added up over time. And I saw something else: how much control I actually had. Not perfect control, but enough. Enough to choose differently, enough to change slowly, enough to live with intention. Still, there were only 10 days left, 10 more days of this quiet experiment, and deep inside, a new question began to form. Not about money, not about limits, but about the future. What happens after this ends? Because this was not real life. Not completely. It was an experiment, a controlled situation, a temporary challenge, but soon it would be over. And then real life would return. More choices, more freedom, more temptation. And the question remained: would anything actually change? Or would everything go back to the way it was? That question stayed with me, quiet, unanswered, waiting for the final days. The final days arrived more quietly than I expected. There was no big moment, no dramatic feeling, no clear line between the experiment and the end. Just another day, and then another. By day 25, something inside me felt different. Not excited, not proud, but steady, very steady. The urgency that I felt at the beginning was gone. The resistance had softened, and the constant thinking had become natural. I no longer felt like I was trying. I was just living this way, and that realization felt important because it meant this was no longer just an experiment. It was becoming a habit, a quiet way of seeing things. Around day 27, I did something I had been waiting for. I checked my money, carefully, honestly, without fear, and for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. Not because there was a lot, but because I understood it. Every number made sense. Every expense had a reason. Nothing felt hidden. Nothing felt out of control. That feeling was new, and it was powerful. Because before, money always felt a little unclear, a little uncertain, something slightly out of reach. But now, it felt simple, clear, manageable, and that clarity felt better than having more. Then, the final day came, day 30. I woke up the same way. No celebration, no big plan, just awareness. I moved through the day, slowly. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to notice it. Every small action, every small decision, every small thought. Because I knew this was the last day of something important, not just a challenge, but a lesson. That evening, I sat quietly. No phone, no distractions. Just thinking, looking back at the past 30 days. And one question came to my mind: what actually changed? At first, the answers seemed simple. I spent less, I wasted less, I became more careful. But those were only the surface. The deeper changes were quieter, stronger, more lasting. I learned that many of my habits were automatic, not chosen. I learned that discomfort is not something to avoid, it is something to understand. I learned that enough is not a fixed number. It is a feeling, a perspective. And most importantly, I learned that control does not come from having more. It comes from needing less. That lesson stayed with me, even after the experiment ended, because the next day, everything returned: stores, choices, freedom. I could buy anything again. I could spend without limits. And for a moment, it felt strange, almost uncomfortable, like stepping back into an old life that no longer fit the same way. I stood in front of something I wanted to buy. Not expensive, not necessary, just something I would have bought without thinking before. And I paused, not because I had to, but because I was different. The question was no longer, can I afford this? But do I really need this? And that question changed everything. Because sometimes the biggest change is not in your money, it is in your thinking, in your awareness, in your ability to pause before you act. That is what stayed, not the $5 limit, not the strict rules, but the clarity, the calm, the quiet control. And even now, long after those 30 days, I still carry that feeling, not perfectly, not every day, but often enough to make a difference. If you have ever felt like money controls you, like spending happens without thinking, like small habits are slowly building something you don't want, maybe the answer is not bigger changes. Maybe it is smaller limits for a short time, just to see clearly again, just to feel what enough really means. Thank you for listening. If this story felt familiar or helped you reflect, you can stay with this channel for more quiet stories like this: slow stories, simple words, and real life lessons to help you learn English and understand life a little more deeply.